Hello, guys, and welcome back to Between the Ropes TV. Guys, we're back. We had a little week off last week. That was my fault, so apologies, guys. But hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really does help us out, and we are back with a vengeance. Tonight, we've got a really interesting one. I wish you guys sometimes had sight of our WhatsApp group chat because me and Ray, we might seem quite friendly in here, but I'll be honest, that chat goes off sometimes, and we disagree with each other. So we're going to get straight into it. Obviously, you saw my post-fight reaction, guys, and I stand by a bit of what I've said in terms of I don't know if Ben Davison did do the right thing by throwing the towel in. I understand the humanitarian side of it with, obviously, Lara's a killer. He could have done Lee Wood some serious damage, but I can't get out of the mindset that with 6 seconds left of the round, he could have got back to the stall. Lee Wood, I know we've seen footage of Lara destroying another guy within 10 seconds of the round. However, Lee Wood is a better boxer than that. He's a tricky guy. And I just think he could have survived that 6 seconds. And I'm not saying I'd have sent him out for the 8th round, but I just think Ben Davison, he could have sat him on the stool, had a proper look, and gone from there. That's all I'm saying. Ray desperately disagrees. We've got a couple of regulars with us. Davey, pleasure to have you in. And Mickey C, same to you. So, Ray, I'm going to come to you, get your point across here, and then I'm off to get the boxing gloves, and we're having it.
Yeah, round 13. Round 13 we'll go again. First of all, evening everybody in the chat. Thanks for joining us. But yeah, I've got to completely disagree with you, Josh. I think Ben Davison knows Lee Wood very, very well. Very, very well. Double well. And I think, to be honest, he knew he was gone, and Lee Wood confirmed that. He had a little chat with Carl Froch, which has been made public. Thanks to Carl Froch, and he's kind of confirmed, look, I was gone. I think that was just fighters' pride protesting there. Vast majority of fighters protest when they're getting stopped, even some in worse condition than what Lee Wood was. I have a feeling that had that fight continued for the other 6 seconds, Lee Wood would have been waking up in the dressing room. That's how severe it would have got. Lee would have been rendered unconscious. Pretty much what he did to Michael Conlan, he would have been on the reverse of that. I think it was a wise decision. I think Ben Davison's getting a lot of stick, lack of experience, lack of top level experience. That's debatable, but I think that's more for another day. I think there at that moment he had to make a decision. And look, don't get it twisted, guys, because we often give it stick to trainers that get a bit too brave, and no one likes a brave corner. We can all reel off the names of fighters on the top of our tongue that have suffered from having a brave corner, the likes of Gerald McClellan, very famously. And I think this was a case where Ben Davison showed compassion, showed instinct, and showed the knowledge that he's got of his particular fighter. And that's what mattered, not necessarily top-level experience. How well does he know his fighter? He knew his fighter well enough to throw in that towel, and he knew his fighter was done. And that's what it takes at this top-level boxing. Lee Wood made a mistake. He got caught. He paid the price, and the towel came in from the trainer that knows him so well.
No, I can, as I said, I can see that side of it for sure, Ray. But I just can't get past, if we look at how the fight was going, Lee Wood was ahead on the scorecards, on anybody's scorecard, to differing levels. And let's not forget, Lara was blowing. For me, he didn't look sharp. That crispness had gone from his work. And, the left landed, it was a peach of a shot. I'm taking nothing away from the shot. But really, it only landed because Lee Wood was getting a bit predictable with that shot on himself. So Lara had time to really plant his feet and land. Whenever he was just, in a normal exchange and, Lee Wood was moving around the ring, Lara wasn't really troubling him. So these are the sort of things just all rolled into one that I'm just thinking 6 seconds. But Davey, he is right here. I said straight away he should have had the time to recover. But after it was stopped, his legs were gone in the corner. Eddie Hearn made a good point in saying, 10 seconds is longer than you think. And again, I get that, Davey, I really do. But I just think, if you look initially, he sees the towel coming, Lee Wood. He turns, you can see him saying, no, no, no. But he's turned on his legs. And, for the fact that his brain had reacted immediately, I do think more of him was there than what was possibly given credit for at the time. However, I will say, as Ray said, that he's come out now and backed Ben Davison and said, it was probably the right thing, whether I like it or not. I just think it begs the question a little bit. Joel's in the chat. Sorry, Ray, before I give you back. Evening, Joel. Pleasure to have you, mate. Guys, make sure you smash that like button. It does help us out. Mickey sees him with his opinion. I think it's quite rare you see a trainer throwing the towel. Mm-hmm. But as Ray says, he knows Wood and knows he was gone. If he'd have let it go and he'd have been hit, he would have been given stick as well. Now, I think that's fair, isn't it, Ray? As Ray's just said, we give stick to brave trainers. We now, or I am, giving a bit of stick to conservative trainers, I suppose, is possibly the best way of putting it. So, I mean, Ray, where does this draw a line now? Because in terms of Ben Davison, we've titled this, is he a good coach? There's been question marks about him for a long, long time. And only really with the exclamation point next to it in terms of what Tyson Fury's gone on to achieve post Ben Davison. As much as Davison deserves the credit for what he did do with Fury, how do you rate Ben Davison as a trainer? Are you there, mate?
Training. A lot of people have left him in the past couple of years. Josh Taylor, Tyson Fury, even as recently as Mark Dickinson. That's a lot of talent that's gone, but he's still got a lot of talent left in his stable. For me, he's still a promising trainer. Devin Haley speaks highly of him. And Devin Haley's a good fighter. He's still done a lot in the game to suggest that he's going to be a promising trainer, and he will grow to be, I believe, one of Britain's best trainers. He's got a particular style that I like. Not being biased, I mean, facts. And everyone was raving about him. I'm not going to sit back and let this decision define him, but for me, he's a good trainer. You go back to fights of old, Meldrick Taylor versus Julio Cesar Chavez, that first fight. Meldrick Taylor was bossing that fight. Everybody knows that, but it got stopped 12 seconds before the end of the final bell. And everybody said that fight should have seen the final bell. But what people don't realise was Meldrick Taylor was still taking a beating. Those shots, there's very few shots that Chavez was landing, was taking the hell out of Meldrick Taylor, and he couldn't continue, and that's why they called it off. I know and appreciate that Lee Wood was winning the fight, but that shot that he got caught with, and I said the same about, look at the experienced trailer like Freddie Roach. How close was he coming to stopping that Amir Khan's fight with Marcus Maidana in that 10th round? You see what I mean? So it's a difficult one when you talk about the top level experience. You look at down in the other end, there wasn't enough experience in Gerald McLennan's corner. If Emmanuel Stewart was in that corner, that would have had a very different outcome against Nigel Benn. So I do get some cases where experience comes into it, but on the other hand, I just think it was just a case of how well he knew Lee Wood. He obviously knows Lee Wood double well, and he knew probably from watching him spar and watching him in the gym. As soon as Lee Wood got up from there, he must have thought, I've seen that before, and he's gone. And when he gets up like that, he can't continue, and that's what he saw. That's what I would say.
No, definitely. A couple of great points from Davey here. I rate Ben very high as a technical trainer. He's not really training for knockout boxers. He's more about the science of boxing. I'd agree with that. I think if you're a puncher that is looking to fine-tune your boxing skill set, Ben Davison's someone to talk to and, look at possibly joining up with.
Yeah.
The other way, I don't think it quite works. And I think he's always going to have those limitations for me. And I am basing that purely off what we've seen Tyson Fury go on to do. And look, he's gone from me being very awkward, successful, but just an awkward heavyweight, and it's his size that was winning in fights. So now he's just a different force under Sugar Hill, and it's he's an incredible all-round fighter now. He's also said it's quite ironic that Conlon was winning the Wood fight as well, and he got caught in the last round. It's almost I think poetic justice is the word that gets used. But Ray, what do you think the odds are of Lee Wood coming back and winning the rematch as and when it happens?
It's possible. I mean, you could argue Laura would always get to Lee Wood. My worry with Lee Wood, and I said it in the preview, was if he plants his feet and stays static, that's when you'll get hit and that's when you'll get hurt. And if he gets hurt, is he got the discipline to get back on his bike again, get out of range? You see, when he was boxing, when he was using his jab, people talk about Lee Wood's left hand landing more than Laura's. Actually, I thought it was the right hand. I thought Lee Wood couldn't miss with the right hand, and that's what was keeping him at bay. It wasn't enough to rattle and to drop Laura, but it was enough to keep Laura, at a distance where he could stay out of range of being hit by Laura's power shots, but still effectively control the fight and pick up the rounds. And that's why I effectively scored it round 3, 4, 5, 6 to Lee Wood. I thought had he won round 7, I thought, hang on, he's going to win this fight at a canter. I did think, he's probably going to lose a couple of rounds. It might get a bit hairy for him. You might take a couple of rounds off. But I started to believe he was going to win this on points, and then he made a mistake. He got caught. He telegraphed the left hook, and then he got caught on the counter. It was a beautiful left hook, and it put him out.
No, definitely. I mean, for Lee Wood now, Ray, do you think the right thing to do is take the immediate rematch, or is it worth taking an interim fight? And possibly, we saw Lara potentially spit at Josh Warrington at the end. And I think spitting's a bit too far for me, obviously, but
a bit.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to put it mildly, because what Lara did in the ring on Saturday night was nothing short of brilliant in terms, he came down from a losing fight and got a really good win. But yeah, if the spit is genuine, then obviously we can't condone that. But would you go straight into it if you Lee Wood, or would you take an interim fight and possibly let Warrington Lara go again and face the winner?
Nah, I'll go straight in again. Hopefully the money's right for him at his age. Why not? He was the world champion. You got to think at his age, if he doesn't get that automatic rematch, he may not get another shot at the world title, unless he gets it guaranteed somewhere. So I'm thinking, for a guaranteed shot at your old belt, a fight that you were winning until you made one mistake, pretty much a bit like Dillian Whyte versus Povetkin. He was winning that fight until he got caught with Povetkin. He got put out. Povetkin was still very, very dangerous. So for me, be brave and go for it. Anthony Joshua's done it recently. In fact, Anthony Joshua's done it twice. Be brave, go for it. He was brave. I mean, you can't say he's not. He was brave enough to have Lara fight him in a voluntary defence. So I'm very confident. He'll take the rematch. What do you think, Josh?
No, for me, I can see, again, it's one of those, I can see the sort of pros and cons of both. But again, it's the age for me that clinches it. 34, he's been a featherweight for a long time. So obviously you've got to, get there while you can. And then there's an interesting comment in relation to that coming from Davey. But we'll just address Michael's first. When I come to think of it, the 2 fights he's been training for, both fighters have looked like being beaten. Wood, Conlon and Lara. And then obviously Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall. Maybe he is a one-dimensional trainer.
Good point, yeah. Good point.
Definitely. I mean, Davey's back in. He agrees with Mickey C. They all seem to leave him after getting close fights. And I just think that adds weight to the fact, there's only really a plan A. And I think we saw that when he was with Fury. We definitely saw it, obviously, in the Taylor Catterall fight. And I think we saw it in little flashes, obviously, when you look at Wood Conlon versus Wood Lara. Plan A is very good, but I think with a Ben Davison fighter, when plan A doesn't work, there just isn't a plan B. And I think that's what, at that top level, we're starting to see that sort of pattern emerge, which, sort of cast out. But just in relation to what I was saying about Lee Wood, having been obviously a featherweight for a long time, and I had heard about this. I've not seen the interview, but I'd read an article on it. There's an interview with Lara's head coach on YouTube saying Wood was overweight and that he tried to get him to go back on the scales, and then security rushed in. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch the weigh-in to know if this is accurate or not. I don't suppose you've seen it, Ray.
No, I haven't, but I know Davey for Fine Fact has seen it, and he messaged me about it in our group chat. So I've got to take what he's saying as the truth there, because Davey's always bang on. But yeah, that's an interesting one. But whether it's had an impact on the performance, I'm not too sure. But the Laura Cam are a little bit devious, shall we say?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I'm not doubting that it potentially happened, but maybe it could have happened by mistake or what have you. And I think Laura's camp, making a meal out of it, possibly. I'm just suspicious about their camp. They're just a bit, just a bit devious. Yeah. So I'm not too sure on that one.
No, I'd agree. I think it might be one of those that, where we're seeing a mountain get made out of a molehill type
Yeah,
thing.
possibly.
But next, Davey's back in with his own plan. Wood Warrington next, and the winner fights Lara. But Wood as the rematch clause might not be immediate. I think, the way Eddie Hearn sort of sounded it out was that it's an immediate rematch clause, but obviously all things can be negotiated. So that makes it very interesting. But I suppose to finish off this little bit, Ray, if you're an elite level prospect, should we say, or a fighter at the top level, would you go to Ben Davison as a trainer?
Well, the McCormacks are there. He's still got Will Corley. I think he's still got Royston Barney Smith, who's with Frank Warren. I believe he's still got Lee McGregor as well. So that's a hell of a lot of talent. That's probably, aside from Dennis McCann, that's arguably the bunch of Britain's best talent. So yeah, if I was a prospect, I would consider him for sure. If you got a good stable, you got good sparring. So I would definitely consider him. I mean, you've got to, haven't you, Josh? I mean, I'll put back onto you. Sometimes you've got to look at the winning mentality in a camp, and also how hungry fighters are. If everybody's on the way up, then it's got to push and motivate you. Would that come into your thoughts as well, Josh? Like if you were starting out, whether or not you've been a successful amateur or you've come off the back of a good Olympic run?
No, 100%. It will come into your thinking. I think you've got to look at who you're going to be training with. We've talked about that, haven't we, in terms of the success of the Matchroom Gym with Tony Sims, and also the success that obviously like Shane McGuigan's had in recent years. Killers breed killers, so to speak.
Exactly.
And, so that would come into my thought. But I think just as equally, that would be in. And then the very next thing that would be in my head is, oh, hang on a minute. Why have all these top people left him? As you said, Mark Dickinson's now left him. That's a prospect coming through. It's different people at the top level leaving after a bad performance or, a close fight. But when you start to get the odd prospect on the up leave as well, it just for me would be a seed of doubt, thinking, why are the top people leaving him? I don't know. Maybe I'm being harsh there, but there's just something about him I just can't.
The thing is, Josh, I can't see why you can't. I know I've always been a big fan of fighters that stay loyal to trainers throughout the whole career, the likes of Marvin Hagler, Carl Froch, just to spring some in your mind. But there's nothing wrong with learning from someone like a Ben Davison and then moving on. As you become as your fights increase in terms of the gravity of the situation, from jumping from British to European to Commonwealth to world titles, the upper echelon of the sport. As you progress through there, you can switch trainers. But I think as a prospect starting off, you'll learn from him. Definitely, you'll learn ring craft, ring generalship from him. I get your point about the plan B aspect, but that can come from another trainer, and sometimes it's easier for another trainer to sort of train another fighter who's at least schooled in the fundamentals of boxing, the hit and moving aspect. And that's what Ben Davison's fighters tend to do quite well.
No, 100%. Mickey C's in. I think if you're wanting to win titles, you don't go to him unless you're a prospect. If you're wanting to win belts, you go to someone else as your career progresses. And I think that's sort of linking to what Ray's saying there. And I can see that, but I just think from Ben's own point of view, it's almost a shame that is, isn't it? That, he's starting to get sort of tarnished or labelled with that brush of Ben Davison's a good coach, but he'll only get you so far type thing. I think that's possibly where we all are here. Davey agrees with you there. It's about adding to your arsenal. Also, Davies brought up a very good point in the chat. Hit that like button, guys and girls, if you're in there, as Davies said. But yeah, hit that like button. It does help us out, and subscribe if you haven't already. Davies disagreeing with Michael. Devin Haney works with Ben as well. He does, but there's, correct me if I'm wrong.
Bill Haney's head of that camp, isn't he?
That's what I mean. Yeah, I
think Davison does do a lot of work with Devin Haney, no doubt. But don't forget, guys, the same debate that we were having with Joe Gallagher a few years ago. You know, we got to remember Joe Gallagher went on that massive run. I think it was 31-0 with all these fighters, and then John Murray lost. Paul Smith started losing. Stephen Smith started losing. Liam Smith lost. Scotty Cardle lost. Crawler lost. Do you see what I mean? Jose Burton then lost. Then most of these fighters started leaving them, and then the same questions were asked. Brendan Ingle. Dominic Ingle had a similar sort of run, and then the likes of Dave Caldwell. He had a couple of back-to-back defeats, and trainers in camps go through this. They go through the high of winning, and then the next one will come and be Shane McGuigan, and then that'll be the really real test of the McGuigan camp, won't it?
Well, there's a hole in the McGuigan camp now, obviously, with Lawrence Okoli leaving, isn't he? Of giving up his UK residency, and he's in Dubai with Sugar Hill. Davies raised a very good point, and not heard much of Joe Gallagher now you say that. And in fairness, you look at his current crop. Short of Natasha Jonas, who obviously has just had, possibly one of the best years of any fighter ever, in fairness.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Wonderful, yeah.
The Gallagher stable is definitely not what it was a few years ago, and it's definitely gone downhill. So it is an interesting point you raised there. He's also said Kid Galahad with Ingle as well. I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think these trainers will, to a point, go in circles of, they'll get their prospects, they'll ride the wave, win the titles and whatnot. And then obviously, father times undefeated, they start to go and it'll go full circle. They'll get the next breed and so on. But I just, for me, I definitely couldn't compare a Ben Davison to some of the, Dominic Ingle there we talked about. Even Joe Gallagher, in fairness, I'm not the biggest fan of Joe Gallagher, but he definitely had that run where he looked like an absolute talent. So we'll move on from this, Ray, because the next one I'm really interested to get your thoughts on, and that's Dalton Smith. A lot's been made of, obviously, him trying to win the Lonsdale belt outright, which I love that route, personally, for a fighter. I think it's traditional, and I think in 12-round fights, it gives prospects and, people that are on that rise the chance to really work on that engine for 12 rounds. In a more controlled setting, if they're going to show that they can go to world level. Yeah. However, against Billy Allington on Saturday night, I've got to be honest, I did some social media posts on this and said rate it out of 10. I gave it a 6 myself, and that seemed to be general consensus. Matchroom and DAZN have committed pretty big money to Dalton Smith for this next 3-fight deal. This was one of those fights. Now, are we underwhelmed here? What are your thoughts on Dalton Smith on this, Ray?
I thought it was a very underwhelming performance. He had many opportunities to get Allington out of there, and he didn't. He hurt him on numerous occasions, but he couldn't quite finish him. And I thought at this level, bearing in mind he struggled with Casey Benjamin. If you're struggling at this level to get somebody like Allington out of there, I do worry about him stepping up. You can talk about learning fights, etc. And this is why I've always said, and I don't want to harp on about judging prospects a bit later on, because when you get moments like that, it makes you sit and wonder: are we guilty of overhyping our prospects far too early? Listen, I thought some of these variety of punches were very good, but clearly as his level of opponents at domestic level are becoming slightly tougher, he's struggling to get them out of there. He's not moving his head. His head's still sent on centre line. His head's still static for me. He's not working the angles as good as what he was. I'm starting to dissect that now and think, that's just because he was obviously levels above who he was fighting on previously. And then as he stepped up to fight tougher, stiffer kids at this level, he's struggling to put those combinations together to get them out of there. and that's my thing with Dalton Smith. I've always kind of been a bit cautious of him. And that's just a difference in caliber of opponents between people like Samuel Mason and the likes of Casey Benjamin and Allen, who's, they've been opponents where you would think somebody in the trajectory that Matchroom are pumping into Dalton Smith, you'd be getting him. You'd be getting him out of there, or getting him in more convincing fashion than that. I mean, he didn't lose a round. He wasn't in danger of losing any rounds, but it wasn't a stellar performance, put it that way.
No, I agree. I think 6 was fair. The one thing that I will say is that I was quite impressed with how patient he was, and there's pressure on in that situation, especially knowing that you've got the big headline April headline show, coming up. But he was patient and he didn't rush his work, which for me that's one of the biggest sins that a prospect makes on that rise. They're guilty of smothering their own work by trying to force it too much.
Yeah.
But we've got some comments in. Davey's in. Dalton Smith just couldn't finish. He found everything and couldn't jump on him and take him out. I completely agree. Raymond Hales, Ray, great to have you on, mate. He's saying Smith's overrated and Davey's back in that. I've heard this a lot recent, but I think better opponent and the higher you climb brings out a better fighter. I personally agree with Davey there. What do you think, Ray?
I mean, it is a good point what Davey's saying. I mean, Usyk springs to mind in terms of how he didn't perform well in his 2 opening fights at heavyweight. And looking at him against Anthony Joshua, he was scintillating, he was class on both occasions. Going back to Dalton Smith, though, I do think that the performances that we've seen recently against good kids at domestic level, winning records, we expected to see better performances that he's been given. It's not as if you can mention anything about the rounds. He's been very active. He's been getting plenty experience within the ring. I expected to see a bit more. I know what you're saying. He was patient, but Allerton was there for the taking. Times when he could have doubled up on the right hand, could have targeted the body, then followed through on the backhand. He didn't. Again, defensively, still some gaps there for me. And from that point of view, I think, well, actually, he's still a work in progress, isn't he? But I think that's the fairest way that I would put it to him. He's still very much a work in progress. And for that reason, I've got to say he is overhyped, because people are saying, this kid would, one more defense of his title, and he's ready for, he's ready for a European or a fringe world title contender. But, Sam Maxwell is no Morgan. I think Sam Maxwell's got the style to beat Dalton Smith. I really think people are sleeping on Sam Maxwell. They shouldn't be. That kid's a good fighter.
No, he is. I mean, do you read too much into the fact that obviously Box had made it fairly public that they'd approached Sam Maxwell about fighting Adam Azim and he's knocked it back? Now, I get fighting for the British title. Obviously, that creates a bit of history and it adds something different to the fight. But, if you were Sam Maxwell now, forget the British title for just 1 second. Who would you be more confident of beating? Adam Azim or Dalton Smith?
Dalton Smith for me. Adam Azim's very, very fast and he's very explosive. And when you're fighting with fast fighters, the key's timing. But that could also mean that the best thing to beat speed's timing. And the problem with that is you may have to receive a few before you land your own and time your opponent. But Dalton Smith, I think Sam Maxwell can beat his game. And what I mean by that is he can be on the front foot, throw his shots, spin off him, goes in 2s and 3s, maybe even go in 3s and 4s before Dalton Smith gets to work. And I think that can give him the advantage in winning the rounds. I don't think he can be that aggressive against somebody like an Adam Azim, who would just be too quick for him and counter him and potentially knock him out. Dalton Smith, that's the other thing with Dalton Smith. We talk about his power, but the shots that he was hitting Allerton with, he did hurt him, he did wobble him, he got him down, I think, in the 8th round. But when he was landing some of them shots clean, I thought he should be stopping that kid, knocking him spark out, and he wasn't. So I'm I'm not too sure whether or not he's a bigger puncher is what people are saying, which is why another thing where I think he might be overrated. With Sam Maxwell, we know he's got skill. You got to remember, he had 2 fights with Lomachenko in the World Series of Boxing. Yes, I know that's before he's turned pro, but even then, we've seen his boxing skills. That fight he had with Ennis Brown. I mean, yeah, he's been stopped, but he in terms of his wins, he showed a great amount of skill, ring craft, ring generalship, and these are things that you got to remember. Dalton Smith hasn't faced anyone like that in his career so far. So from the trouble he's had in these last 2 fights, I'm not too sure if he's going to confidently dispatch Sam Maxwell. What do you think, Josh?
I think, you can only look at it, especially the prospect on current form. And, Dalton Smith's last 2 fights have certainly left us wanting a little bit more, I think it's fair to say. Whereas Adam Azim, yes, possibly, we've got used to seeing these destructive knockouts. But last time out, I think he got, rounds that he vitally needed for his development longer term.
He needed them, yeah.
So, no, I think, you'd pick Dalton Smith if you're Maxwell. But I agree with John here. The problem is with Maxwell that he is quite chinny. And, we even saw that, even though it was only a 6-rounder on before the bell. We even saw that at times there. He's fighting a journeyman. And he did get clipped a couple of times. And I'm not saying he looked, he didn't look in trouble for 1 second. He won every round. Mm-hmm. But my point is, you go in there with a Dalton Smith. He does carry some power. I don't think he's quite the killer that possibly everybody had him pegged as after the Sam Mason fight. But, he, as John said, I think chinny is probably the best way of describing it. And, we could see a problem there down the line. We've got some comments to catch up on, Ray.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Richard, mate. You all right?
Yeah, pleasure to have you on, mate. Not a problem. Smash that like button. It really does help us out. And then Chris had come back. Let me just find it. There you go. On Ben Davison, he's a great trainer for me. I think he should have left it for a few seconds or minutes to see if Lara knocked Wood down again. But it is all ifs, buts, and maybes. So Chris, as often happens, me and Chris kind of agree on, all things boxing. I don't know what you're laughing at, Ray. That's disrespectful.
Little fan club there. Little fan club.
Well, if we know what we're talking about, mate, I don't know what I can say to you.
We'll be getting the violins out in a minute.
Full orchestra, if you will. Davey's in there, but Chris, that could have been in hindsight a career-end decision if it was left.
Yeah.
I've watched the fight highlights a few times since, and as soon as he was off and Wood could relax, his legs were buckled. No, that's fair enough. I mean, Chris, if you watched the first sort of 20 minutes or so of this stream, we were sort of talking about that, and I'm on the fence. I can see both sides to it. I'm just devastated, in fairness, for Lee Wood. Chris is also back in. Maxwell will be Smith's biggest test so far. Maybe we'll see Smith up his game the better the opponent, but so far I've been underwhelmed by him. See, I'd agree with that. I think Sam Maxwell will be his biggest opponent. But for me, up until the Sam Mason fight, which would have been, 12-0, that's 10 stoppage wins in that. I was buzzing about Dalton Smith. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't deluded and people were talking about him, a world title by spring next year. I wasn't thinking that, but I was very hyped up about him. I have sort of tapered that off a little bit. And I think, I agree with what Ray was just saying, really. I think it's one to possibly put the brakes on. The Maxwell fight is a brilliant, real marker for where he is, going forward. And, there's other great fights for him domestically at 140 as well, isn't there, Ray?
Exactly. You've got to look at somebody like Sam Maxwell, who I get the point that's been made in the chat about. I wouldn't necessarily say he's chinny in terms of his chinny. For me, I've got a different definition of it in terms of somebody who's susceptible to being knocked out more easier than other boxers, but he can't get hit. I would go often and say that, and we know that Dalton Smith, is shown prowesses for being a decent puncher. I would say I wouldn't say he's an excellent puncher, but Maxwell will test him. As I've already said, I don't think Dalton Smith's faced anybody like a Sam Maxwell. Sam Maxwell's got the experience. The boxing skill to give him a hard night's work. If he was to beat Sam Maxwell comfortably, it would definitely put the division on notice. Josh. I mean, I would have to say that. I would have to put the division on notice. There's still some good kids there from the face. I like the fight with Robbie Davis Jr. That would be a good fight. There's people like Harlem Eubank. And don't forget, there's a big fight in my neck of the woods, isn't there, next month? Lewis Ritson and Ahara Davies. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's not going to be facing the winner. They're not going to want to entertain that. But the loser, that'd be a good, another good fight for him if he was to get through Sam Maxwell. So there's lots of people in that weight class who he can fight. There's also Michael Mickinson's brother as well, Lucas. He's a decent name. So there's plenty of talent at 140. I think he can mix it with for sure.
No, 100%. Raymond Hale's back. Can't knock safety first with a puncher like Lara.
You can't.
No, I get that. And then Davies back. What about Gary Cully? Now, I sang Gary Cully's praises. Davies saying he looks a bit like a kickboxer, very tall. He's 6'2", which for a lightweight is just.
How does he make that weight?
It's ridiculous. I mean, the thing is as well, he doesn't even look too gaunt on the scales or anything. It's ridiculous. But another big win. And don't get me wrong, the opponent wasn't, this isn't one that we're saying, I'll get that man a world title shot, obviously. But, it did bring a WBA Intercontinental belt with it. Obviously, the ranking comes with it. But, Ray, how excited about Gary Cully are you? Because I am genuinely buzzing for him. I just think with these dimensions, he's a problem for anybody at lightweight, purely on size alone.
As long as he can keep safely making that weight, he will be a problem. I'm cautious because, again, I saw the same hype around Lewis Ritson. I saw the same hype around other boxers, and I'm cautious. I'm kind of thinking earlier when we were discussing about plan A's and plan B's, and again, I want to see if he can't get somebody out of there, Josh, what else has he got in his arsenal? Can he dominate a fight on the back foot using his jab? As boring as it might be, he's got all the tools and the skills and the size to be able to do that comfortably. So if he can't stop somebody, that's what he should be doing. He's got a lethal back left hand. He can definitely punch. Can he do the duration as well? We saw, and I'll go back to Ritson, very explosive early on at lightweight, but we realised that actually when he was asked to do the weight, the distance against somebody like a Patera, I know he's hurt earlier on with a body shot, but he struggled to do that. And then as he's moved up in weight, he struggled to stop people. Is Gary going to have that same problem? But from what I've seen so far, I like it. I like the way he controls centre ring. I like the way he uses his jab, not just as a range fighter, but that's pretty much like a ramrod jab. And he doesn't miss with his backhand. He's clever. He picks his shots well. He doesn't get hit too much, which is always a bonus. Mm-hmm. But as the opponents step up, that's going to change. Some people are going to target his chin, going to target his big body. And
you've got to get to him, though, haven't you? At 6'2", that's the thing.
You've got to get in range, but some people are going to be quick on the feet and going to be able to get there, And he's in a red hot division, Josh, isn't he? There's plenty of talent there from the face. But I mean, to talk about Maxi, who's next for him, Josh? I mean, can you see that fight being made?
Yeah, I can. To be fair, I was just going to say, Chris is here. Another stunning performance from Gary Cully. The man's so good, he's ready for a big step up now. You'd like to see him with Maxi Hughes next. Imagine that on the undercard of Taylor Serrano in his home country.
Oh, yeah, man.
I can see that fight being made. I don't know if it'll be next, but they need a big fight for Gary Cully as that homecoming. And, I think it's not... I'm a fan of what Matchroom and Eddie Hearn do, generally. Yeah. But for whatever reason, they have failed to land Maxi Hughes that big fight. And, I think he's earned it now, particularly after the Kid Galahad win. Kid Galahad, former world champion. He's a name, however you want to look at it. Mm-hmm. So I can see that fight being made. I just don't know if it'll be next or, if I'm Maxi Hughes, I'm looking at Gary Cully being like, hang on, I've done everything I've got to do to earn a big fight. Why am I... Maxi Hughes has gone from being the underdog chasing that sort of a fight to now I think he's earned the right to be a little bit more choosy and be like, well, hang on a minute. What money, unless it's mega money that you just think, well, I'll take that.
What's it do for his career, Josh? And that's what you've got to think of your Maxi Hughes. What is it, a win against Gary Cully? What does that Does that further my career? It doesn't.
No, that's the thing. Domestically, possibly people think, oh, fair play. But, on the world scene, you're probably going to have some other lightweights behind closed doors saying, thank God someone's ended that Gary Cully train of hype or whatever we want to categorise it as. But for Maxi Hughes, I hope he gets a bigger fight than that. And that's with all due respect to Gary Cully. I just hope it isn't next. We've had some more comments in. It's nice and busy. Back on Ritson Davis. That smirk rate's got to stop. Who do you guys think will win, Ritson or Davis? It's a great matchup. And you know what? Before I give it to you, Ray, that is a great matchup. And can I just say, for me, how criminally under-promoted that fight's been.
Oh, don't get me started.
We're hearing nothing about it in what, for me, has the potential to be one of the domestic fights of the year.
I'm hearing that this card can't even get a TV deal. And I've heard there's a certain cut-off date, which I'm assuming is going to be sometime next week. If there's no TV deal, there's a guy who's based in the Northeast. He's not from the Northeast originally. He's got a YouTube channel. He's very, very well connected in the Northeast, and they're talking about him streaming this card. It's supposed to be promoted by Probellum. Probellum are really struggling, as we know. They're changing over. A new promotional company's bought them out. So yeah, it's not looking. I worry for Probellum and I worry for Probellum fighters, which is why Pat McCormack and Mark Dickinson have left Probellum and they've gone to DAZN. They've gone to Matchroom. But I think it's a genuine 50-50. I think Davies has got what you need to beat a Ritson. He can box. He can punch with both hands. He's a good body puncher. Ritson doesn't like body shots. But Ritson, when he gets going and when he's got the Geordies behind him, he's a force. You saw that with Robbie Davis Jr. You don't want to fight too much with Ritson because Ritson's getting stronger and stronger. He's filling out to being a solid light welterweight. So this can go either way. Obviously, being from the Northeast, I've got to back Ritson, but I wouldn't be surprised if Davies does a number on him. Davies has got some underrated power. He's a half-decent puncher. He's got enough power to cause cause problems for Ritson. How do you see this one going, Josh?
Well, I was just about to say, I actually agree with you, to be fair. I think when Ritson gets going and builds up that head of steam, I think he's a tough night's work for anybody at 140. But purely because I'm in a bit of a gambling mood and our prediction table, if you like, is locked at 9-9 each for 2023.
Oh, it is.
I'm going to go O'Hara Davis because we can't be separated so far. So I will go Davis. Richie's back. That's mad to hear they're struggling to get a TV deal for it. Sheer madness. Ritson's good following up the Northeast, and Davis has some serious one-punch knockout power. Shame how Davis has not moved on, really. I think I'd agree with you, but I think that's kind of his own fault, isn't it? Because, he's been very outspoken at times. He's upset. He has. That ended up. It's not good. Davey, this is the sort of comment that I like to see. Best boxing channel in the UK, lads. Love the breakdown.
Appreciate it. Definitely.
Richie's back. I think it'll be a Davis KO mid-rounds. I can see them trading at times. I think that's what you're hoping for, isn't it? I'm hoping we see a good old-fashioned domestic tear-up here. And when you look at both fighters' attributes, dimensions, I think it's really has actually got the potential to deliver on that. Because all these domestic fights, they talk about, meet me in the middle, we'll go to war. However, this for me, and when you've seen, both of them throughout their career, this has got the potential to actually deliver that. We'll move on to the last thing because it's been mentioned earlier up in the comments. But I know what Chris is alluding to here because I know Chris is he's a massive, massive fan of all this YouTube boxing scene. So he said,
when you talk about the YouTube boxing, this guy, I love his anti-YouTube boxing stance.
There will be steam coming off Chris's keyboard right now as he's typing in his comment. No boxing to watch this weekend for me, which is a shame. Now, obviously, as we all know, Jake Paul and Tommy Fury possibly finally get it on this weekend. It is scheduled for Sunday. BT Sports pay-per-view, which is bizarre. But I mean, Ray, just very, very quickly on this one. 1995, you've got Makabu and Badu Jack for the WBC Cruiserweight title on the undercard. I want to say what the fuck's going on, but am I being harsh?
I think you're right. I think, to be fair, from a marketing and a business point of view, you could understand why that fight was always going to be pay-per-view, just because of who Jake Paul brings. You got to remember, because of his appearance on that Love Island, Tommy Fury's got quite a lot of casual fans. More people know Tommy Fury than actually know our proper inverted comma boxers. And he's because of he's got a famous partner, hasn't he, Tommy? So he's going to be bringing all that along. So that's why they made it pay-per-view. So it didn't really matter who was on the undercard. It was always going to be a pay-per-view. It'll sell as well. The fight, I don't know. I'll still have my doubts as to whether we'll go ahead. These guys have pulled out so many times on mainly Fury. And judging by his pad work with his dad, I don't think he's ready for this fight. I really don't.
No, I mean, I don't know, mate. He did look ready, when he just randomly took his top off for the Yard Baturbia fight. If I wanted to call a bloke out, I'd get half naked too. I think it's in no way pantomime. It's just completely what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Davey's here. Tommy will fall or something on Thursday and be injured in the fight off. This is the thing.
Yeah.
I said it when it got announced again. I will believe this fight happens when they're both in the ring. Even in a ring walk, something could happen. And this is almost for me, and Chris, I apologise because I'm going to use the phrase, but this is why for me it's almost must-watch TV, because up until they're in that ring and that bell rings, I'm still not confident that fight goes ahead, because so far we've had Tyson saying he'll be there, he could break his ribs. Tommy saying, I could break my ribs and I'd fight Jake Paul. I don't need him. So then a week later, he's actually pulled out the fight with a rib injury. We've had, he can't travel to America, which, in fairness, we're laughing about, but we all knew the legal situation. I still stand by, why the hell did he sign a contract to go to the States knowing, these people have access to some great lawyers. So I still think that one was a cop-out. But Davey said it here. Big John that says he's unbeatable in boxing and no man can ever beat him, but he's on YouTube being spocked out. No, you're wrong, Davey, because what is it? No man that is from his mother can beat a Fury. The whole thing's just bizarre. Even at the first bell, if John Fury got in the ring, he'll have to take his top off because obviously that's what the Furies do. But if he was running about the ring, just nothing would shock me with this. I think it's bizarre, but Ray, sorry, I'm going to have to. This is a great comment. Cat Weasel versus Chris, it's almost like you're not a fan of this fight, mate. But Ray, all things equal, it goes ahead as it should. How do you see this fight going? And I want to make the prediction that Derek Chisora stops being a promoter and knocks both out on the spot. Sadly, I don't think it's going to happen. So
yeah. I've got visions of Derek Chisora stopped breaking into the ring and fighting, and ended up fighting with Fury's old man. But seriously, I think Jake Paul wins this. I think Jake Paul stops Tommy Fury. I think people are just saying, "Oh well, Tommy Fury's a boxer, and he's the half brother of Tyson Fury." But boxing doesn't work like that. And you look at the opponents that Tommy Fury's been spoon fed. And it's exactly that. They're being spoon-fed. At least Jake Paul's fought fighting men. Yes, they've been, MMA cast-offs and retired MMA fighters, but they're fighters nonetheless. The people that Tommy Fury fought are basically, taxi drivers from a local social club, really. I think Jake Paul's getting better and better. And that still doesn't mean he's anywhere near good. You can improve and still not be anywhere near good, but he's had access, because he's got a lot of money, Jake Paul. He's had access to very good sparring and very good training that he's doing full time. And he's dieted pretty well as well, and he's physically strong. You saw the head-to-head, and Tommy Fury wasn't able to shift Jake Paul, and people saying, "Oh, you're reading too much into it," but that tells me a lot. That tells me who's a stronger guy. and Jake Paul is quite strong. I think Tommy Fury's bitten off more than he can chew, and I think Tommy Fury, he's too right hand happy, and I think Jake Paul's gonna stop him. I think he'll break him down, and he'll stop him.
No, definitely. I would also add to that, actually, we've seen in Jake Paul's fights that he's had with these MMA guys. And the one positive that I would say is possibly more impressive than if he had fought boxers is, when you're in the clinch or grappling as it was pushing and shoving, he's more than held his own. And I know they're older guys and they aren't obviously at their UFC peak. However, it does sort of add strength to what Ray's just said there in terms of Jake Paul. He's not here to mess around. He is a strong kid. So we will see. Richard's back. So many people think Jake Paul will KO Fury, but after rewatching both of their recent fights, I just don't see it at all. Fury's got better fundamentals. I can see it being an underwhelming points win for Fury. And you know what? I'm going to disagree with Ray in the sense of I think Jake Paul will win it, so I agree, but I don't think it'll be a stoppage. I agree with Richard there. I think it's going to be one of those fights that after 2 years of hype, we end up with a dull, nothing affair that, Jake Paul will get given the nod because although they're both quite famous, he's probably used the bigger cash cow, to be fair.
A fair point, yeah.
I agree with Davey here. It's a 0 win for Tommy. He wins, everybody says it was expected. If he loses, he's finished. Tommy wins, he earns nothing. And if Jake wins, he's got a rank from the WBC. It's a joke. Well, the WBC there, in fairness, they're publicity hunting for me. I don't know if that's the correct phrase, but that is effectively what they're doing. And, I've not really got that much of a problem with it because if he gets into the WBC rankings, to climb those rankings, he's got to face boxers. If he faces boxers, we get all this bullshit ended once and for all. So I've actually got no problem with it at all. I think, in a way, the WBC are trying to help him out, but they've actually probably shot him in the foot, really and truthfully, because once he's ranked, it's harder for him to cherry. He can't all of a sudden pluck out Nate Diaz from the UFC. He's got to actually start fighting proper people. So I quite like that. I think it's a bit of an underrated move. Richard's back. I agree. Tommy's been fighting very low-level journeymen, but I've seen his old amateur footage of Fury on YouTube and old clips. I just think his fundamentals will show. The only question is Tommy's chin. Ricky Attons actually spoke about this, hasn't he? He said for that brief period where he had Tommy Fury in his gym, what he did in the gym, in fairness, was a lot better than what he's shown in the ring so far. But for me, if he's not been able to perform in the ring against these low-level journeymen, if he's, afraid of the bright lights or whatever we want to phrase it as, he's definitely going to be afraid because this is a big high-profile card with, and like we said, all the pressure's on Tommy Fury here, and it's all well and good him sitting in interviews saying, I can't lose this fight. Yeah, but what if? And, I think we are going to see the what if here. And if we don't see Tyson and John Fury disowning him and calling him Tommy Fumbles straight away, this whole 2 years of pantomime has been for absolutely nothing. It's ridiculous. Little Penny's in.
Hello, Little Penny. How are you doing?
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you on with us. I think they're there, and Jake Paul's going for a KO as well. It's mental how, we're a boxing channel, but you look across social media and everything, it's mental how many people are actually going for Jake Paul here. It's almost like it
doesn't surprise me, Josh, pal. It doesn't surprise me because we're a boxing channel, but we know our boxing and we know that Tommy Fury is not a boxer. I mean, neither is Jake Paul, but he's a better boxer than Tommy Fury. I saw Richard make his comment about the fundamentals than Tommy Fury has, but I would argue what fundamentals that he has. He can throw a right hand properly, but that's it. If you look at all Tommy Fury's fights, he's just looking for the right hand all through his fights. He doesn't jab, doesn't move his feet, doesn't move his head. He doesn't look for the shots, he doesn't look for the openings. His left hook's technically wrong. I don't see a lot of shot variety from him. He doesn't double up on anything, doesn't throw in 3s and 4s. So I'm not, just from reading off that, I'm not really convinced. That he's upper body's well built, his legs aren't, and that's where the fundamentals of boxing come from, your legs. So I've got real doubts about Tommy. I mean, if his surname wasn't Fury, and he's just a guy off Love Island that's taken to boxing, would we all be saying that he would beat Jake Paul? I don't think so.
No,
I just
that's
think
actually an excellent point, mate.
I just think Jake Paul's improved so much, and I'm not saying he's now good, but he's got better. I just think he's the one with better fundamentals out of the two of them.
Yeah, you could be looking at a fight for me. The winner of this fight is who's the less crap. To be fair, so yeah, Rich is back. The biggest risk here in this Paul versus Fury fight is not Tommy. He's making his millions. It's the Fury family legacy and the Fury reputation. There's more at stake for John and Tyson, in my opinion, than Tommy. There is, especially after all the talk. But I think when it was announced and they did that press conference tour the other week, Tyson, for me, actually almost seemed accepting, and he started to change his little tune a little bit to, it's a tough fight. They're both novices. I think Tyson knows what might be coming.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's going to make more money on Sunday than he would for fighting 15 low-level journeymen. So
exactly.
In that respect, you sort of can't knock it, can you? Chris is back, the biggest fan of YouTube boxing. It's load of cobblers that Jake Paul could be ranked. I suppose you have to put him in the rankings. I agree. Put him in the irrelevant moronic Herbert's division. More comments. Raymond Hales is back. Tommy Fury is just training, just in the wrong gym. He's bodybuilding. Yeah, you could tell that, to be fair, particularly when he likes to get his top off, which is just bizarre to me. But yeah, Richard's back. To be fair, Tommy leaves his chin out a moment too long. I've noticed that, but is that because he's fighting journeyman and not worried about what's coming back? I guess we'll find out Sunday night. I think you're right, but for me, always use those journeyman fights in that building phase of your career to practice and lay the foundations for what's coming as you go through the levels. So I hope you're right on that, but at the same time, I do just think possibly it's because he's just so limited. Chris is back. I watched the Badu Jack match on highlights on YouTube. I'm not watching it live. This YouTube nonsense doesn't deserve my viewing. Chris, you shocked me. I thought you'd already ordered it on the BT Sports or whatever.
Chris will be there, man. Chris will be there,
mate.
We'll be at Wembley. We'll be at Wembley, and Chris will be in Saudi.
We should have a whip round for Chris's ticket to this fight if you can still get tickets. As long as he's on commentary, I'll pay for it. Davey's back. John Fury will get arrested in Saudi the way he goes on if he's even allowed in. Now that would be a story, wouldn't it, to be fair? So, guys, we'll wrap it up here. I'll just address little Penny's comment. Thoughts on Lara spitting on Warrington. I think the spit didn't reach him based on the distance between the ring and Warrington. I think there was a second spit like JFK and a second shooter. We have spoke about that earlier on, mate. So watch the first sort of 20 minutes when we were talking about that fight from the weekend. Obviously, we can't condone the spitting. Obviously, it's just it's disgusting.
Criminal offence at the end of the day in the UK, it's a criminal assault. And, there was no need for that. It brings the game into the sport, boxing into disrepute. I know Laura admitted it and said, "Oh yeah, of course," but you can't do that on our shows. We won't tolerate that. It might be acceptable somewhere else, but not over here. It's not a good look for our sport, which is time and time again being under the lights. And this is what Josh and I have spoken about. If there's a bad knockout in this YouTube boxing, people, there's all those people that want to be politically correct and stuff. They'll say, "Well, you should be banning boxing." Exactly. So we can't, and they'll look at this and go, "Oh, they spit on each other." You can't have stuff like that. I don't mind the pushing and shoving, the swearing, trying to punch each other. That's all in the name of aggression. It is a fighting sport, but spitting, there's no place for that in the sport, in the streets. So that's my view on that. That's my view on that. I hate stuff like that.
No, 100%. I'm with you. It's spitting's just absolutely vile. Chris is back. The confrontation in the ring made me fall asleep. Every standing up wetting themselves. I don't care. Rather watch leaves fall out the tree. Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. If I was there, I'll lock myself in the toilet. So, Davey, great chat as always, lads, and everyone on the sidebar. Take care until next week, guys. We'll be wrapping up there, guys, but we will be back live next Monday. We've also got a really cool video dropping tomorrow. A bit of an interesting one about Canelo and John Ryder. So check that out and let us know what you think in the comments section. And yeah, we will see you on the next one.